Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, dozens of deaths are confirmed in a ferry sinking on Tanzania's Lake Victoria. Hundreds more are still missing as the rescue mission is suspended overnight. An outpouring of support for Bobi Wine. The Ugandan opposition politician's back home after having spent weeks in the US being treated for injuries he says came from police torture. He tells crowds that he'll keep fighting to the death for his ideals. And multinational music labels are turning to Africa to harvest top talent from the continent. Universal music groups rolling out new operations in francophone countries on the continent and has set up headquarters in Ivory Coast. We hear from our correspondent in the country. But first, officials from Mwanza, near Tanzania's Lake Victoria, say that more than 200 people may have drowned in a ferry sinking on Thursday. Over 40 have been confirmed dead. The vessel was reportedly overloaded and carrying over 400 people when it went down in the afternoon near Ukara Island. Emmanuel Makundi tells us more.
At the moment, the deaths now have been confirmed to be at 44, and those who have been rescued alive 32. And according to the regional commissioner of Mwanza, the search exercise has been stopped because of the night and the risk at the lake. But currently, the exercise has been stopped, and people have been asked to come and probably identify those bodies which were rescued over the evening. But those who are alive have been taken to the hospital, and of course, some of them, their health is very critical.
What can you tell us? What do we know about what led up to the sinking of the ferry?
Well, I've managed to talk to one of the witnesses. Of course, he was not on board of the ferry, but he was just the other side of the shore. He saw what happened. According to him, he said as the ferry was approaching to the shore, many people tried to reach at the edge of the gate, and that led the car which was on board the ferry to tickle and made the weight to go on one side of the ferry and then caused the accident to go up and down. And then that's where exactly some people who were very near fishing tried to help some of the people who managed to get out of the gate from the ferry.
Emmanuel Makundi there reporting from Tanzania. Now, Uganda's pop star politician Bobi Wine arrived back home from the US on Thursday. He'd left the country earlier this month to seek medical treatment for injuries he says were inflicted upon him by police whilst he was detained last month. The singer, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, faces treason charges. He is an outspoken critic of President Yoweri Museveni and upon his return vowed to keep fighting for more freedoms in Uganda or die trying. Nicholas Rimmel has more.
Lawmaker Bobi Wine used to be a pop star and he was welcomed like one. He was back in Uganda after receiving medical treatment in the US. Wine says he was beaten and tortured by Ugandan security forces last month. He faces treason charges after President Museveni's motorcade was stoned in August. The 36-year-old member of parliament said the police took his passport this Thursday, but he was in a defiant mood.
The government is determined to keep us slaves in our own country. I cannot ask for asylum anywhere else. I cannot be a refugee, no. I am Ugandan and I will stay in Uganda. And I will fight for my freedom and I will get that freedom. And if I don't get that freedom in my lifetime, at least my children or their children will get the freedom that they deserve.
His supporters hope he will one day defeat Museveni, who's been in power for more than 3 decades.
I just request the government to settle down, to cool down. It should just comply with Bobi Wine.
I'm so happy because the man is struggling for us. The man is fighting for us. We like youth, we have never benefited anything through this government.
Some analysts say he's not necessarily the most competent politician, but he's the most appealing to the youth among a political class dominated by older Ugandans.
When a bird gets tired in flight, you know what it does? It lands on the nearest tree, no matter how weak. So the young people you see in this generation, the young people of Bobi Wine's age, the young people of Bobi Wine's generation, are simply finding the nearest tree to land, no matter how weak.
Museveni has had the constitution amended to remove age limits. This means the 74-year-old is allowed to run for a 6th term in 2021.
At least 9 people were killed in a raid by Boko Haram extremists in northeastern Nigeria. The militants arrived on pickup trucks and raided Kalari, Abdiye and nearby Amara on Wednesday evening. Witnesses say that locals were fired on indiscriminately and houses torched. There are fears that a split in Boko Haram could spark an upsurge in violence against local communities. A more radical faction known as ISWAP has broken away from Boko Haram's long-time leader, Abubakar Shekau, and pledged alliance to Islamic State. Now, a new law in Morocco aimed at tackling violence against women has been passed. 62% of the country's women say that they've been victims of psychological or physical abuse. The main breakthrough in the law allows the use of social media or text messages as evidence in cases of domestic violence. Josh Wadi has more.
Victims of domestic violence can find refuge here at this local association in the small town of Shishawa. Every week, around 30 women of all ages come for help. Around 90 legal cases involving them are ongoing, from divorce to underage marriage or expulsion from the family home. Most are afraid to talk about their experiences. Zakia, a 30-year-old mother of 2, says she's not only a victim of economic violence, but also of marital rape.
Although I intend to report it, I don't dare say that I am a victim of sexual violence. Once you say that to a lawyer, to the police or the authorities, they say, how can you be a victim of sexual violence if you are his wife? They say that you belong to him, he can make you do what he wants, as he wants. Even if for me, a sexual relationship should not be like that, it has left me psychologically scarred, and it's offended my dignity as a woman.
Women are provided a safe space here to talk and find strength in sharing their stories with each other. A new law in Morocco has criminalised sexual harassment. It's an important step, even if some associations blame public authorities for a lack of communication and unwillingness to apply the law.
I think that this law requires state intervention as well as the intervention of all the parties involved, just to push women to file their complaint and defend their own rights.
To deal with these issues, lawyers now have new tools to use.
From now on, we can bring evidence. It can be social media, photos, text messages. We now have the freedom to bring this evidence forward, which didn't exist before.
Evidence that can protect victims.
Our goal is not to penalize. It is not punishment. The goal in itself is to protect women, to respect women's human rights, to respect human rights in general.
The law has given Moroccan women hope, even if nothing is likely to evolve without a fundamental cultural shift.
Multinational music labels are turning their attention to Africa to capitalise on the continent's vibrant cultural scene. Despite the prominent role that music plays in many African cultures, the formal music industry still has a lot of room for development. And Universal Music Group is keen to fill the gap. It set up headquarters in Ivory Coast as it expands operations in French-speaking Africa and signs on a stable of new artists from the continent. Frank Kersey brings us more from Abidjan.
Musically, the world owes Africa a great deal. Yet while the continent has been the birthplace for so many styles, the monetization of its music hasn't always kept pace. Now one of the world's largest labels, Universal Music Group, has opened a new division here in Ivory Coast for 23 French and Portuguese-speaking countries across Africa.
We're trying to mark out a position in the market. We're trying to be innovative, to bring new ideas and to support the development of artists. We want to offer them the same experience of development as they would get internationally and try to give Africa the voice it deserves at the global marketplace of the music business.
To begin with, the label is signing up big names across the region, such as DJ Arafat here in Ivory Coast and Tenor in Cameroon. Recently signed Toufan have come from Togo for the launch.
We think the arrival of Universal is going to be a motor for promoting African music and for promoting young talent.
Universal Music is a subsidiary of Vivendi, a large French firm, whose other subsidiaries, including Canal and Havas, have helped arrange tours in Africa for French artists and vice versa ahead of the launch. However, they have a little catching up to do, as Sony Music has also recently arrived.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.